Bright Tuty. Every student matters.
And this unit we are going to look at the geography. Now, the first chapter that we are going to see from this particular unit is called the locational setting and relief. So this is chapter 5 of your book. Now in this chapter, what we are going to see is we are going to look at where our country, India, is located, the longitudes, the latitudes, and how we can locate it, how we can find it in the map. And also we will look at the various features of India, its landscapes. So we'll look at the rivers, the mountains, the climate, everything. Okay. So this is like a general understanding of India, our country, its features. Alright. Now, the India that we see, that we can relate to today, is the modern India. Okay. Now, why do we call it modern? Is because it was formed recently in the shape that we understand, the map that we draw today, right? When we buy the atlas, when we buy the maps from the shop, from the stationery shops, the map that we get, the political map, the physical map, and all those various kinds of map. That map, the country, the sketch of it, right? The boundaries, the lines, how we see it, what we understand as modern India has been formed very recently. Okay. So in 1947, we got independence. India got independence from who? From the British rule. India as a country was under the British rule, under the colonial rule, and in 1947 it got independence from the British. Okay, and when it got independence, what happened? India was partitioned into two nations. So the India that we know today has been partitioned, or India was partitioned, okay, into two nations. So earlier India meant present day India plus Pakistan. Okay, these two formed what was known as India, one country. But in 1947, there was a partition. Okay, now as a result of partition means divide. The country was divided into two different separate nations. One was India and the other was Pakistan. Okay. So today when we look at the map, what do we see? We see India, and then on its northwestern part, we see another country, which is Pakistan, neighboring country, right? Now, when India was under the British rule, it was under the British rule for over 200 years. Okay? Because of being ruled by British administrators, British rule, India also was influenced by it. Okay, and that influence can still be seen in the systems of our governance, in the things that we do, in our languages, in our cultures, etc. Now, two of the main important influences which we can still see is, number one, use of English, right? Now, use of English began with the British rule, okay, and we still continue its use. Number two is the parliamentary system of our country. How the governance works, how the government works, how the people are ruled and governed, okay, in our country today. That is also as a result of the parliamentary system that the British had, and then it was continued in India even after they left. Okay, so these two are the influences which we still see it in our country. Okay, so what we are trying to say is that the country, the India that we understand today, that we see today, that we learn today, it was not like this before 1947. Okay, there were changes happening in how India looked. Okay, before 1947, it looked like a different country, not how it looks today, because we know that Pakistan was also part of India. But over time it changed, and then the India that we know today was created or was formed. So there has been all these changes. India is a very ancient land, but over the period of time, changes have occurred several times, numerous times. And as a result of these changes, what has happened? It has taken various shapes of the country. Okay, and after 1947, the shape that it has today, that was formed. Okay, and that we can relate to, we can study about. Okay, but that was formed only after 1947. Before that, it was different. Okay. Now, having said that, now let us look at its location and size. So, we come to the first topic. Okay, we now try to see where India is located in the map of the world and the size of it, how big or small, or how it looks, or what size it covers. Okay. Now, India is a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. Okay, so when we say it, we say India is a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic country. Alright, and India is the 7th largest country in the world. Alright, and as we all know, the landscape of India is very rich in natural resources. There are many resources like minerals, oil, soil, etc. Okay, we can also say forests and all the other things from that we derive from the forest. So India is also very rich in natural resources. Okay, and India as a country falls in a region in Asia called South Asia. So when we say India, when we refer it in, when we compare it with the other continents in the world, we often use the term South Asia. Now don't be confused, it means only a region in Asia. Right? So we know that India is in the continent of Asia. We know that there are different continents in the world, right? And Asia is one of them. Now, India falls in that continent of Asia. Now, when we look at Asia, then we see that India is in the southern part of that continent. And because of that reason, we say South Asia when we refer to India, because of where it is located in the continent of Asia. Okay, that is all. It does not mean a separate or different continent altogether. It means that India is in the continent of Asia but lies in the southern region of that continent. Okay. Now, when we look at India, then we see that in the north, it is bounded by the Himalayas, right? And the southern part of India is a peninsula. Now, peninsula means a piece of land, okay, land mass, which is surrounded by water on three sides. Okay, so there is a piece of land here. This is land, and water one side, two side, three sides. So if a piece of land or a land mass is surrounded by water on its three sides, then that piece of land is called peninsula. Now, if you look at the southern part of the Indian map, right? So, if this is the map of India, then we see that the water surrounds the southern part on three sides. So, this means that the southern part of the country is a peninsula, okay, and it is surrounded by Arabian Sea, Indian Ocean and Bay of Bengal. Okay, Arabian Sea in the west, Bay of Bengal in the east, and Indian Ocean in the south. Alright. Now, the country is also referred to as Indian subcontinent. Now, I will not go into this deep. I will not explain to you right now about this Indian subcontinent, because later on we'll go into a separate topic where we will discuss about what Indian subcontinent means and why we refer to India as Indian subcontinent. Okay, for now let us only focus on the fact that India is also often referred to as Indian subcontinent. Okay, just like how we said that India is also referred to as South Asia. Now, the landmass of India covers an area of 3.28 million square kilometer. So, the area which India covers is this much, okay, 3.28 million square kilometer. So, you can see it's a vast area. Okay, India is a vast country. Now, that area, when we compare to the world, okay, there are so many countries in the world, right? So, out of the total area covered by all the countries, 2.4% of that total area is occupied by India. Okay? And when we look at the population, we looked at the area, right? Now, when we look at population, we know that India is a very populous country, right? So, the population of India is over millions, means it's huge number of people living in this country. And India ranks second after China, okay, when it comes to population. So, China ranks first or the most populous country in the world, and India ranks second. So you can imagine the number of people living in the country. Now we know that in the northernmost tip of the country we have Kashmir, and in the southern tip of the country is Kanyakumari. Now if we are to measure the distance between Kashmir and Kanyakumari, the country extends from north to south, and that distance that it extends to is 3,214 km. Now in the similar manner, if we look from west to east, so in the west we have Kutch, which is in Gujarat, and in the east we look at Arunachal Pradesh, okay. Now, the distance that it stretches, okay, from west to east, this is in the west and this is in the east. Now, that distance is 2,933 km, okay. So, you can see the stretch from north to south, from east to west is also very large. The southernmost tip or the point of India is called Indira Point. Now, Indira Point is in Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Now here, this is very confusing for most of the students. Here I have said southernmost point of India. I have not mentioned southernmost point of the mainland India. I have only said southernmost point of India. That means when you look at India as a whole, including Andaman Nicobar Islands, Lakshadweep Islands, we know that we also have islands, okay, which are part of India. So it is not just the peninsula and the northern part of India, but also the islands. So all of these land masses put together forms India. Now when somebody asks you, when you are asked to answer this question, and the question is, what is the southernmost point of India? Then it is Indira Point. the point that is located in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. But if the question asks what is the southernmost point of mainland India, then it is not Indira Point. It is something else, which we will see later. Okay, so that you have to be very careful about. Now this Indira Point, which is the southernmost point of India, this was affected by the tsunami of 2004. The tsunami, which is a natural calamity, right? Meaning like earthquake, floods, landslides. Tsunami is also natural calamity, meaning it happens naturally. People do not make it happen. Alright, it causes disaster, it destroys people's lives, livelihoods, etc. Now, tsunami occurred in the year 2004. Now, this was a very devastating event, and because of this, the Indira Point, the southernmost point of India, was also damaged, and as a result, this is now submerged, or this has gone under the water. Okay. Now let us look at latitudes and longitudes. Now there are various longitudes and latitudes. Okay. For example, before we look at the latitudes and longitudes of India, let us just briefly look at what latitudes and longitudes are. So if this is the globe or Earth, there is always a center. Okay, and from that center, lines are drawn towards the north, towards the south. Okay, and imagine this is the center of all that lines, from where it goes north and from where it goes south. Now these are called latitudes. Okay, and similarly, if this is the center and from where the other lines are drawn towards the west and towards the east, these are called longitudes. One of the tips to understand latitudes and longitudes or differentiate between the two is that when we say la, then we see that our mouth is stretched in a straight line, okay, towards east and west. So la means, when we say la, then latitudes are vertical, okay, yes, and then longitudes are, when we say longitudes, then the mouth, the upper lip goes up and down. So that way, this is just an easy tip to help you remember what is latitude and longitudes. Now, these are important in geography. Why? Because these help locating the countries or the areas, what we are looking for in the globe. Okay. So, when we put them together, then it forms certain angles or certain times, and that helps us locate where India is. So, when we know that India falls on certain latitudes and longitudes, then we know exactly where India is located. Alright. Now, the latitudes of India, now latitudes are this. Right? These are latitudes and these are longitudes. Now, the latitudes of India, it extends from 8 degree 4 minutes north. Okay, north. So, if this is the center, then any line which goes down from the center towards the south is south. And then any lines which goes northwards from the center, then it is north. So 8 degree 4 minutes north to 37 degree 6 minutes north. That is the latitude. Now, when we know that the latitudes are north, then we know that India falls in the northern hemisphere. Okay. Had it been 8 degree 4 minutes south to 37 degree 6 minutes south, then we would have understood that it falls in the southern hemisphere. So from the main center, all the countries that have latitude with N, the north, then that means it is in the northern hemisphere. Okay, so imagine that this center, the line, the latitude, which is the center from where it divides the earth, then the upper division is the northern hemisphere and the lower division is the southern hemisphere. So all the countries lying towards the southern hemisphere will have S in their latitudes, but the countries which lie in the northern hemisphere has N in their latitudes. Okay, so like I said, India falls in the northern hemisphere, not in the southern hemisphere. Okay, now there is Tropic of Cancer, which crosses or which passes through India. Alright, in the map later on we will see Tropic of Cancer and as well as other equator, Tropic of Capricorn, all these latitudes, okay, which pass through India. Now this also, Tropic of Cancer, also sort of divides India into two halves because it passes through it. Okay, now that was latitude. When we look at longitudes, then the longitudes of India are 68 degrees 7 minutes east and 97 degree 27 east longitude. Now we know longitude means this one, right? So anything, if this is the central longitude, then the lines which are drawn towards the east, that is called eastern hemisphere. Okay, so just like the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, now these also, the main central line also divides the earth into two halves, and one part towards the east is called eastern hemisphere and the second half towards the west is called western hemisphere. So if you can see here, the longitudes of India is 68 degrees 7 minutes east and 97 degrees 25 minutes east. So when there is E or the east, then we know that India falls in the eastern hemisphere, not in the western hemisphere. Had it been W, west, then we would have known that it falls in the western hemisphere. Okay, so just like how India falls in the northern hemisphere, in the similar manner here we can say it also falls in the eastern hemisphere. Okay, now all these lines denote time, like how we are saying the longitudes and latitudes, like 68 degrees 7 minutes, right? So it refers to angle and it also refers to time. So these longitudes and latitudes, they refer to time. Now when we look at longitudes, okay, it refers to time. Now we have already said that the longitudes of India is 68 degree 7 minutes and 97 degree 27 minutes. So 68 degree 7 minutes and there is, it goes on to 97 degree 27 minutes east, 25 minutes east. Okay, so these are various lines. We know that on the west we have Gujarat and on the east we have the states of Arunachal Pradesh. Now all these lines, the longitudes, they have separate time. Okay, now the time difference between the longitude in the west to the longitude in the east is 1 hour 56 minutes, meaning each longitude have their own time. And as you go ahead, okay, from 68, 69, 60, 70, 71, and you go like that, right, on, which means that with each 1 degree of longitude, the local time is ahead by 4 minutes. So the time here at Gujarat could be 7 p.m. But as you go on to the next longitude, then it could be 7 p.m. 1 minute or 4 minutes. Okay, so the time gets added on as you move towards further east. Alright, so this means that with each longitude, the time of the place which falls in that particular longitude is also increased by 4 minutes. Now this tells us that every place falling in different longitude in India will have different times. That is problematic, right? Imagine if you are in West Bengal, you have one time. You come to Bihar, you have another time. You come to Delhi, you have another time. That is very confusing. So, for that solution, there is a system which makes sure that all the states in India have one time. Everybody follows one time. Otherwise, it will be very chaotic and confusing for the people. So, if we look at different longitudes with different times, then what happens is the sunrise at Arunachal Pradesh takes place 2 hours earlier than in Gujarat, because we know as you move east, the time gets added by 4 minutes, right? So that means if in Arunachal Pradesh the sun rises at 6 a.m., then the sunrise that happens in Gujarat takes place 2 hours later. Okay, so Gujarat, the time in Gujarat is behind Arunachal Pradesh. Now, if this was to be the case, if the states lying towards the eastern part of the country is ahead in time, then it becomes very problematic, right? So, for the solution, what we have is there is a standard meridian. Alright, so if the country of India has, for example, longitudes, and of all these longitudes, imagine that there is a standard or there is this main longitude. Okay, now that longitude is called standard meridian, and the time which falls in this standard meridian is the time that applies to all over the country. Okay, and this way every state will not have different time zones. They have one time zone, one standard time, which is followed by all the states in the country. Okay, now the longitude of that standard meridian is 82 degrees 30 minutes east. Okay, so this standard meridian and the time which falls on that standard meridian is taken as the Indian Standard Time. So the time followed by people in Jammu and Kashmir, Kanyakumari, Kerala, Gujarat, Arunachal Pradesh, all these different states falling in different parts and corners of our country, they all follow Indian Standard Time. So there is no confusion. Alright. Now we have already said that Tropic of Cancer, it passes through the country, and then as it passes, it divides the country into two equal halves. Okay. Now India as a country is called tropical country, meaning the climate of India is tropical. Okay. Now we know that in the north we have Himalayas. Himalayas, right? Now this Himalayas act as a natural boundary. Okay, and what it does is it does not let the cool weather, too cold weather coming from China, Tibet to enter into India, and it does not let the warm air to go out of the country. So it acts as a natural boundary or barrier which keeps the country as an insulated warm compartment. It keeps the country warm. Okay, insulated means that it keeps the country warm or cold, alright, by using the mountain range as a barrier to keep the country warm and cold when it is warm and cold, alright. But it also has tropical monsoon. Apart from being an insulated compartment, India also has tropical monsoon. Now that was the climate. Now when we look at the geographical regions of India, then we can say that there are three main geographical regions, meaning three distinct regions. Okay. Now those are Himalayas, Thar Desert and Deccan Plateau. Himalayas in the north, Thar Desert in the west, and Deccan Plateau in the central plus southern part of India. Okay, so these are the three main distinct geographical regions of India. Now remember, I told you about Indira Point being the southernmost point of India. The southernmost tip of mainland India is Kanyakumari. Okay, so Indira Point is the southern point of India, while Kanyakumari is the southernmost tip of mainland India. So if you exclude the islands, the Andaman and Nicobar Islands and Lakshadweep Islands, and if you only take the mainland, the peninsula, north, south, east, west, then the southernmost tip of that mainland country is Kanyakumari. Okay. Now, if you go further down south of Kanyakumari, then there is something called Park Strait. Okay. Now, Park Strait is just like a small passage which divides or which separates India from its another neighboring country, which is Sri Lanka. Alright. So here we have a map, alright. So this is the map of the world, and you can see equator. Equator is the center of the latitude. Okay, and all other latitudes run south or north of it. Alright, so like I said, like we just learned how Tropic of Cancer is also one of the latitudes, and then it passes through the country, India, alright, and it divides because it divides the country into two halves, alright, and as you can see that India is part of the continent Asia, but when you look at Asia, right, you see that India falls in the southern part of Asia. So this is why we refer to India as South Asia. Okay, and here you can see other continents: North America, South America, Africa, Europe, Asia, Australia, and yes, those are the continents. Alright, and you can see that the peninsular part of the country is surrounded on three sides by water, and the southern water body is Indian Ocean. This is Bay of Bengal in the east, and this one right here is Arabian Sea. Alright, and here as you can see, the southernmost part of the mainland country is separated from its neighboring country, which is Sri Lanka. Now this passage right here is called Park Strait. Okay. Another map here which clearly shows us Bay of Bengal, Arabian Sea, Indian Ocean. It also shows Park Strait. Okay. And here we have Lakshadweep Islands, and here we have Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So all these form the country of India. But when we have to look, or when we refer to only mainland India, then we refer to only the mainland without the islands. Alright. And here you can see India's neighboring countries as well. So we have Pakistan, China, Nepal, Bhutan, Myanmar, Bangladesh. Alright.